joining us right now, the publisher of the Federalist, Ben Domenech. Ben, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be with you this morning.
What's your take on all of this? First off, let's talk about Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Who won in that town hall last night?
Don't you love the audacity of Hillary Clinton sort of saying, well, you know, I wasn't really committed to running for president. You know, I was still considering it, something like that. Something no one, literally no one in this country would ever believe with a straight face. I think this is really a significant issue for her. It's going to continue to be a significant issue. It gives off the impression that she is, you know, a figure of the 1% who's been insulated from reality, the political reality that people have been experiencing in this country for so long. And I think it really helps Bernie that he has the ability to point directly at these connections between Wall Street and Hillary Clinton and say, you can't trust this person on these issues that matter to you when it comes to all of these young Democratic voters who are not sold on Hillary Clinton at all. You saw how successful he was in winning them in Iowa. I think he's going to continue to be successful winning them going forward, and it's going to be an issue that dogs Hillary Clinton all the way into a general election should she be the nominee.
Wow. So, I mean, you know, in terms of the paid from Wall Street banks, a lot of bankers say they're hearing privately from her she's not going to do any of the things that she says. Like, she's not going to hold Wall Street, you know, rein in Wall Street, hold insurance companies to account.
Exactly, and I think that that's something that voters understand as well. They know that they can't trust her on those issues. They know that this is something where she's talking out of both sides of her mouth. And this is, I mean, you know, frankly, think about this for a minute, Maria. In Iowa, you saw about a quarter of the Democratic electorate vote based on the issue of who do you believe is honest and trustworthy when it came to selecting a candidate. Of that 24%, 83% went with Bernie Sanders, 10% went with Hillary Clinton. And that tells you everything you need to know about how honest she's viewed by her own electorate.
But, by the way, what about this coin toss? 6 times? And it's just so strange.
Who provided the coins?
Yeah. What do you think about the coin toss?
What are the odds? I mean, you know, honestly, she should go out and buy a Powerball ticket. You know, it's
to
one
win
of these
6 times in a row.
Ben,
wow.
It's incredibly rare. Yeah.
Here's Morgan Ortegas.
Ben, when you look at the mechanics of the primary schedule coming up, in New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders is leading in most polls by double digits. So I think Hillary Clinton really has to pull a rabbit out of the hat, so to speak, in order to win it. I jokingly said earlier, 8 years ago, she cried before the New Hampshire primary and beat Obama, so she's going to have to figure out something else. But if she loses, which she's on track to in New Hampshire, she can't get another win until South Carolina, which I think is not until February 20th. So she's going to go a long time without putting points on the board. Saying that, if you look at the long term of the schedule, it certainly favors her. How do you think this ultimately ends up shaking out? Are the Democrats really going to put up a 74-year-old socialist?
I think that what this really is about is sort of illustrating how much weaker of a candidate she is this time. 2008, she was a much better candidate. I saw her on the trail then. She was much younger. She seemed to be have a lot more energy then. This time around, I feel like she has so many more flaws, not just from her tenure in the Obama administration, but because people feel like she's just become more out of touch. There is this whole idea that she has a firewall in these later states where there's more of an African-American population, that she's going to be able to turn out those voters. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not sure that this is a situation where people can't look at Bernie Sanders and say, isn't he closer to you when it comes to what you really believe? And I think that for the Democratic electorate, that's true.
Wow.
Hey, I'm Joe. I just was wondering, you know, what you think is going to happen coming out of New Hampshire on the GOP side. Who drops out? Who takes away wind at their back?
This is the last shot for John Kasich, for Chris Christie, and for Jeb Bush to make this a 4-person race instead of 3. And so they're all looking at Marco Rubio. He's got a target on his back. They're all trying to take him down a few notches to get into 2nd or 3rd and to have some momentum to say, hey, I should get consideration too going forward. Jeb Bush has already come out and said that he's going to continue on no matter what the result is. We'll see if that's the case. But I think this is a situation where right now the biggest story from my perspective is, when is Marco Rubio going to start taking on Donald Trump? He's really held back in terms of his attacks on him. Trump is ahead of him, obviously, in New Hampshire. You would see a situation here where you'd like to see Rubio do pretty well there. If he ends up not being 2nd or 3rd, that could actually really take a lot of his momentum out going into South Carolina, where he's already said that he wants to win. So I think he needs to start taking it to Trump and seriously.
Wow.
So, Ben, if Chris Christie and John Kasich do drop out, who do you think that their votes go to? Do you think that they endorse anyone? I mean, Christie has been pretty vocal. This morning, actually, he was attacking Rubio on his stance on abortion because he has no exceptions for rape or life of the mother. So I can't see him endorsing Rubio. Also don't see him endorsing Cruz. Where do you think Christie and Kasich go?
You know, it's interesting. It's very difficult to predict where they go. One of the things that's so difficult to predict about this cycle is the fact that moderates and more pragmatic voters have actually been going to Donald Trump to this point. You know, you saw people who were self-described moderates and liberals going to Trump in Iowa. You could see that happening in future states. It's difficult to predict where those votes go. It is interesting to me, though, that someone like Rand Paul hasn't endorsed. And so I think you may see a situation with Christie and with Kasich where they do the same thing, where they don't really decide until maybe later on in the process whether they're going to endorse or not.
What do you think about this whole controversy between Trump and Cruz now? Did Cruz's camp do something wrong?
You know, I think Cruz's camp they're very tactically savvy. I think that they shared around the CNN story about Ben Carson, not campaigning after Iowa with the implication that he could potentially be dropping out. They did a direct mail thing that is a typical direct mail thing. Honestly, I got one of those things from Mitt Romney last time in 2012. It's a very sort of old-fashioned thing. And Donald Trump is using it to claim voter fraud or something ridiculous of that nature.
Isn't he a little late to that dance, though? It's been a few days.
Yes, it's been a few days. It's kind of weird. For a moment there, it looked like he was going to be magnanimous in sort of defeat, that he was going to be more serious, and that moment vanished very quickly. And so I understand that he's trying to get attention. He's trying to get the conversation back on him by saying outrageous things. But I think that the problem is that the tactic he's using this time just reminds people that he lost.
Yeah.
So if I were him, I would shift to a different topic, and soon.
Ben, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to be with you.
Really appreciate it. Ben Domenech joining us.